Today's episode is one of those fascinating developments that I think we all have sometimes in our lives. It's when we realize something that we've been thinking about for a long time and all of a sudden it clicks. I was inspired by Stephen Wolfram's fundamental theory of physics that I just came across, and it helped me conceptualize and think about the financial markets in a very different way. And I want to talk about this today. But first, the usual update. This is the Not Even Wrong podcast. It's September 17, 2020. This is Krim Delco. Since the last update, September 15th, we are down 16%. The market is down 1%. For the year, we are up 201%. The market's up 4%, outperforming by 197%. So if you put $100 in Orange Capital Partners at January 1st, 2020, you would have $301. If you did the same with the S&P 500, you would have $104. This is what this outperformance actually means in terms of dollars. We are still driven by Tesla, the largest position. We had a little bit of a drawback also in our CRISPR index, particularly with Illumina. Illumina announced the purchase of a company that does liquid biopsy, which is actually a very good thing. The purchase was perceived negatively by the market. I think that's partly driven by the bad reputation that Illumina has for making acquisitions, and also by the perception of the market that Illumina is forced to keep making acquisitions to keep growing. So these two, I think, parameters drove the stock down about 12% in the last 2 days. We believe Illumina is a fantastic company set to revolutionize medicine, revolutionize genetics. There are certain bumps in the road. We consider Illumina more like a Microsoft, an Intel, an Amazon, an Apple in its early days. So there are road bumps, but overall, the institutional knowledge, the innovation stack of Illumina are very difficult to replicate, and the market is expected to grow dramatically. So we think that the company is fine. Illumina is part of our CRISPR index, so it's not a very large position, but it's an important factor in the CRISPR thesis. So what I want to talk today is what is really a new way of thinking about physics, the world, the universe, and as part of that, of course, the financial markets, and particularly the question of wealth creation. Let me first get to the fundamental idea. So Stephen Wolfram is a physicist who worked with people like Richard Feynman and has a very, very good reputation in the market. In physics, of course, not in the market. And his fundamental idea, which goes back to the cellular automata that he thought about way back, is in his new work, which is the fundamental theory of physics. It's something like this. So instead of trying to squeeze reality that we observe into formulas, he's trying to do it the other way around. He's trying to base somewhere. He wants to start somewhere with a fundamental unit, or he called that the cellular automata in the past, some sort of fundamental unit. He then takes that unit and puts it in relationships with other units. He defines that relationship as a calculation, that in every time step that calculation is made. So for example, if you had a point which is related to another point by multiplying the distance by 2, if that was all there is, so then in the first time step, the one point and the other point's distance is multiplied by 2, so now the points are, distance is double, and then you multiply again by 2, and so on and so forth. Now, of course, his idea is a lot more complex than that. He starts with what he calls a hypergraph. So a graph, which is in mathematical theory and computer science, a connection of dots, of points. And then he defines the relationships, and he finds the time step that relationship changes every time through a calculation. And then he goes on. And he's trying to, that way, come to understanding of reality, of physics, of the universe. He derives things like quantum mechanics, for example, from those simple principles. He comes to the conclusion that after a bunch of time steps, 10 to the power of something time steps, you end up with something that in quantum mechanics it's called entanglement. And I don't want to go into basics of this theory at all. This is not the purpose of this podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to help people understand what it feels like to run a hedge fund. So it has nothing to do with physics. But the point is that running a hedge fund is incredibly, incredibly fascinating, and it requires to rethink reality as many times as you can while still keeping the hand on the pulse. And this is a very good example of how you can start rethinking reality in a different way and maybe see new things. So using Stefan Wolfram's concept, I'm thinking about the financial markets in a different way. Instead of trying to model the market, I'm trying to understand, okay, what are the simple units of the market? Let's call them the players in the market, people with capital, people who have money that they don't need to spend. And that's the unit. And then I'm thinking, okay, what's the relationship between what are those people going to do, or what is going to happen in, let's say, T plus 1. So I have the money today, T plus 1, the relationship between T0 and T1 is I'm going to think about how to invest my money. And the way I'm going to do this is through a very simple rule. I'm going to look at the best risk-adjusted return. And as a third idea, I'm going to say that there is one constraint in this whole process, which is I cannot go bankrupt. So those three things: a unit, which is the investor, defined as somebody who has more money than they need; their decision-making process, which is I want to invest in the highest risk-adjusted return, and I don't want to go bankrupt. And now I let the game play. And after, 10 to the 10, 10 to the whatever, 10 to the, I don't know how many steps, let's not go there now. I don't want to get too technical, but after many, many steps, I will get to something that we call financial markets today. This is the concept, this is the idea. So I get a fundamental block, I get a relationship, and then I just let the game play, and then I see where it gets. I can ask the same question about wealth creation. Instead of trying to squeeze people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Steve Jobs and all these people into some sort of formula or something that applies to everybody and really doesn't tell me anything, how about I go the other way around? I try to find the fundamental building block. What is the fundamental building block of wealth creation? Well, that is the question, and this is what I want to think about today. And to be fair, I haven't really thought about this very thoroughly. This is not something I have, super answers ready. So this is a work in progress. I want to revisit this theme many times, because this is just the beginning of me trying to think about wealth creation, which is the main purpose of Orange Capital Partners, in a new way. So I'm looking at the units of wealth creation, which are founders. The person that is about to embark on a journey. And that founder, what is the definition of a founder? I think that's the question, and this is probably an episode on its own, but let's just, for brevity, call it a founder is a person that wants to do something that a lot of people find valuable. So they have a certain idea or a certain itch or something that is bothering them to the point where they want to start a business, and it happens to be something that a lot of people find valuable. So that is a founder. And the process, so how does the founder go from time T0 to time T1? What are the relationships between the time steps of a founder? And I think, in my view, the relationship is what we call engineering, or maybe a little bit more formal. It's a way to iterate. So a way to try and fail and learn and then retry and keep trying. So the founder has to be in a position where they can iterate as many times as possible with the third constraint, which is not to go bankrupt. So again, the not bankruptcy theme in the financial markets, very key. You cannot play this game. You cannot be in the financial markets if you blow up. It's not part. I mean, you can have constraints like that. You can lift them. Let's say if you assume the Fed's going to bail you out. So let's say Wall Street can keep playing their game, etc. But in my model, in my thinking, this is key. You cannot go bankrupt. So the founder is a person that wants to do something that a lot of people happen to find valuable. The founder finds a way to iterate rapidly and lowers the cost of iteration. So this is the step that I'm sure needs a little bit more work in thinking. But my point here is that you have a way to iterate, because there is no other way to develop solutions through engineering which generate value to a lot of people. There's no other way than iteration. We haven't figured it out. I think this iteration concept is probably a little bit counterintuitive, because I'm sure a lot of people think, well, what about nuclear power, the Manhattan Project, whatever, all these big innovations, big inventions that led to this, the world change and all that. But if you really think about it, that's not true. The real disruptive technologies that have changed our lives, such as, for example, the iPhone, or Amazon, or Hewlett-Packard with the calculator, or Henry Ford with the car, and I can go on and on and on, Thomas Edison. Those were people that had ideas and then iterated and iterated. And the only way you can disrupt anything in life is by finding a way to continuously iterate and have a cost structure through iteration that is not very high, so you don't go bankrupt. So I just want to emphasize that. This is my model, by the way. I'm absolutely not claiming that this is the model of all worlds, but for me and my thinking, this is how I want to think about it. And to now circle back to the beginning, Stephen Wolfram's idea of thinking about the universe that way, I think is phenomenal. It's a huge inspiration, because it helps you think about everything like that. And I think if we start looking at wealth creation from the basic unit, which is the founder, and then from the relationship between time zero and time one, and then so on and so forth, through a process of iteration, and then you have also the constraint of not going bankrupt, you have a framework which helps you understand why are there people like Steve Jobs, Chip Wilson from Lululemon, Jeff Bezos, Amazon, Elon Musk, Tesla, and SpaceX. Where do they come from? And most importantly, I think it's a good way for us fund managers to look at the world in a more discrete way. Now, I'm borrowing again a word from physics. What this means in plain English is I can walk out of my house and look around and see something and potentially extrapolate, oh, this could be a wealth generation opportunity. No, this one is not. This one is. This one is not. The idea, how do I find those things before they are big? Because that's where you generate your wealth as an investor. This is what this is all about. So it helps us simplify the world instead of looking at complicated formulas, or in a sense like wealth creation is something like we have a company and the network effects and we have this and that. Silicon Valley likes to throw all these things around because Silicon Valley hasn't figured out that. Silicon Valley is actually exactly the opposite of trying to look at the world in a discrete way and then build from there. What Silicon Valley does, it has the capital and the access to talent, and then they basically, excuse my French, just throw shit at the wall and then something sticks. And then in hindsight, they talk about things like they like to say, for example, these days, oh, the network effect or something like that. So this is not what we're trying to do. We're trying to do it the other way around. And I think Stephen Wolfram's conceptual framework is really helpful. You have a unit, and in our case, again, we're applying his framework to wealth creation. So I just want to make that clear. This is not Stephen Wolfram's idea. This is our idea, which we borrow from his concept. We have a founder. We have a relationship between time zero and time one. And that relationship is, like I said, iterate. the founder defined as a person that wants to do something that a lot of people find valuable and they don't want to go bankrupt. These are the fundamental building blocks. I want to elaborate on each of them. I think they're all very important. So what does it mean to do something that a lot of people find valuable? What does it mean to iterate? I can iterate this way or that way. I can do good things or bad things while iterating. These are all interesting ideas. They come together in other concepts such as the innovation stack. So this is not something completely new to us, just to be clear. And this is also something that I want to be very clear about, that this theory helps me understand better something that I'm already feeling that is there. I'm not able to express it in words. And I think this whole idea of starting with a unit and then iterating through time by using the same rule and then see how the game evolves, I think that this whole idea is just a simple help to conceptualize, to think about the problem. And what it means fundamentally for us at Orange Capital Partners is it helps us find better investments to follow our purpose, which is to generate wealth by investing in disruptive technologies with large impact. Thank you.